My friends, there comes a moment in every life when we must decide what we are willing to tolerate. We can accept the sting of failure because failure teaches, reshapes, and strengthens us. But there is one thing we must never accept, not in our lives, not in our communities, and not in our future, and that is silence. For silence is not peace. Silence is surrender. Silence is the slow death of potential, dignity, and truth. When we silence our voice, we silence the possibility of change. Failure is not the enemy, fear is. Many people misunderstand failure because they look at it as a final judgment, a stamp that declares they are not good enough. But failure does not define you. It simply reveals that you were brave enough to stand at the edge of the unknown and take a step forward. Failure is proof of effort, of movement, of growth. The true danger lies not in falling but in allowing fear to silence you, hold you back, and convince you that trying is too risky. Fear whispers that remaining quiet is safer, that not attempting protects you from disappointment, but what it really does is rob you of progress and bury your potential under layers of doubt. When you fear failure, you begin to shrink your world. You start avoiding opportunities not because you cannot succeed, but because you are terrified of what might happen if you do not. You silence your ideas, even when they could change everything. You hide your talents, even when the world needs them. In this silence, life becomes smaller, narrower, and darker. Failure cannot destroy you, but a life lived in silence can. It slowly erodes your confidence, weakens your courage, and convinces you that you are nothing more than your fears. And everything you could have become stays trapped inside you. Failure, on the other hand, is a teacher with a strict but honest method. It shows you where to adjust, what to strengthen, and how to rise wiser than before. Failure builds character because it forces you to face yourself. It strips away excuses and shows you your true resilience. When you experience failure, you discover that you can survive disappointment, learn from it, and return stronger. That knowledge is priceless because it gives you the courage to keep moving. Every person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has faced failure repeatedly. What separates them is not luck, nor perfection, but their refusal to let fear silence them. Fear tries to manipulate you by magnifying the worst possibilities. It says the world will laugh at you, judge you, or reject you. It convinces you that it is better to stay quiet than to risk exposure. And yet the greatest regrets in life do not come from the risks you took and failed. They come from the chances you never dared to take. The silent what if that follows you for years is far heavier than any failure you could experience. Imagine a young woman who dreams of becoming a public speaker. She has powerful ideas, a strong message, and a deep desire to inspire others. But every time she steps toward the stage, fear tightens around her chest. She imagines the audience judging her, her voice cracking, her words stumbling. She tells herself she is not ready, not good enough, not experienced enough. So she stays silent, year after year, watching others speak the messages she holds in her heart. One day, after losing an opportunity she deeply wanted, she realizes that she has been failing without even trying. So she gathers her courage and signs up for a small local event. She trembles through the entire speech, makes mistakes, loses her train of thought twice, and sits down feeling embarrassed. But then something unexpected happens. People approach her afterward and thank her. They tell her her honesty moved them. They say they related to her struggle. Suddenly she understands. The silence she lived in was far worse than the imperfect moment she feared. That first shaky speech becomes the foundation for a new chapter in her life. She keeps practicing, learning, improving, and eventually becomes a powerful speaker. Her failure did not stop her, her silence almost did. This example shows that failure is not the true enemy. It is the fear that holds your voice captive, the silence that convinces you to dim your own light. Once you break that silence, even imperfect steps lead you forward. You learn, you grow, and you transform. You may stumble, but you rise with new strength each time. And that is what ultimately shapes your destiny. Silence protects nothing. This truth is often hard to accept because silence feels safe. It feels like shelter. When we stay silent, we avoid conflict, we avoid judgment, and we avoid the discomfort that comes from standing up for ourselves or for what is right. But the safety of silence is an illusion. It may feel like protection in the moment, but in reality, it is a slow surrender. Silence strengthens the very barriers that block your growth, your dignity, and your future. Every day you stay quiet, the wall before you rises higher, making it harder for your voice to reach the world. What starts as fear becomes habit, and what begins as a moment eventually becomes a lifestyle of shrinking away from your own power. When you refuse to speak up for yourself, you teach the world how to treat you. Silence tells others that your boundaries can be crossed, that your dreams can be ignored, that your worth can be underestimated. Silence is not calmness, it is a quiet acceptance of what hurts you. And the more you accept it, the more it multiplies. Barriers do not fall because you avoid them. They grow because you give them the freedom to stay unchallenged. A closed mouth cannot change a situation, and a hidden truth cannot shape a better life. Your voice, however, is not a weapon meant to destroy. It is a bridge meant to connect you to possibilities, respect, and change. Speaking your truth does not mean shouting, arguing, or fighting. It simply means refusing to erase yourself. It means believing that your feelings matter, your dreams deserve space, and your experiences deserve acknowledgement. A voice used with intention is powerful. It can shift the direction of your life and the lives of others. When you speak with courage, you remind yourself that you are not powerless. You are capable of influencing the world around you. It is important to understand that silence does not only affect you in moments of injustice or disrespect, it also affects the pursuit of your dreams. Many people bury their goals deep inside because they fear judgment, failure, or misunderstanding. They stay silent about what they truly want, and in that silence, their dreams suffocate. When you do not express your aspirations, you disconnect yourself from opportunities, guidance, and support. The world cannot help you if it does not know what you want. The doors meant for you remain closed because you never knock. Voice is not only a shield, it is also a key. Consider a young man working in an office where he constantly receives more tasks than his colleagues. He stays late almost every night, fixes problems others avoid, and takes on responsibilities far beyond his role. Deep inside, He feels exhausted and undervalued, but he keeps telling himself that staying silent will protect his job and prove his dedication. For months, he watches others get promotions and recognition while he remains unnoticed. His silence convinces the management that he is comfortable with the pressure and does not mind being overlooked. One day, after a particularly overwhelming week, he decides he can no longer continue this way. With calm determination, he speaks to his supervisor. He explains how much he contributes, how the workload affects him, and how he wants a chance to grow. At first, he fears this conversation might cost him his job. Instead, his supervisor is shocked. They had assumed he was fine because he never spoke up. Within weeks, his role is adjusted, and he is given opportunities he had silently wished for, but never voiced. His situation did not change because he worked harder. It changed because he finally broke the silence. This example shows how silence builds barriers, not protection. The young man's quiet endurance only reinforced the weight he carried. But the moment he used his voice, not in anger, but in clarity, everything shifted. Speaking up is not about confrontation. It is about liberation. It is the moment you decide that your life will not be shaped by fear, but by courage. Silence may feel safe, but it keeps you trapped. Your voice, even if trembling, has the power to reshape your world. When you break the silence, the barriers before you begin to fall, not because they disappear on their own, but because you finally choose to face them with truth and strength. Your voice is the first step toward change, because change never begins in silence. Change begins the moment you find the courage to express what you believe, what you dream of, and what you refuse to tolerate any longer. A voice is not just sound, it is intention, conviction, and direction. It is the spark that transforms thought into action and desire into reality. Every great transformation in history started with a single voice that dared to speak a truth others were afraid to say. That voice became a ripple. That ripple became a wave. And that wave reshaped the course of people's lives. The same power exists within you, waiting for the moment you choose to use it. A voice carries weight because it reflects your inner strength, your values, and your identity. When you speak your truth not angrily, not desperately, but confidently, you begin rewriting your own story. You stop accepting what limits you and start inviting what strengthens you. Many people underestimate this simple act, believing that one voice cannot make a difference. But silence carries no influence, no movement, no possibility. Your voice, however, can inspire others, challenge what is wrong, and illuminate a better path forward. When you speak up, you affirm that you believe in change and that you are willing to stand for it. Your voice also gives others permission to find theirs. Courage is contagious, and when people see someone rise, they often find the strength to rise themselves. A single voice can transform a lonely struggle into a shared mission. Whether you speak to defend your dignity, to pursue your dream, or to correct a wrong, your words can awaken hope in others who have remained quiet for too long. Even in the smallest moments, your voice can create a shift. It can open doors for opportunities, clarify misunderstandings, build confidence, and create unity. But using your voice does not mean fear disappears. Most people feel afraid when they speak their truth, especially if they stand alone. Your voice may tremble, your heart may race, and your mind may doubt, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move through fear. Many breakthroughs were born from shaky voices, uncertain words, and trembling hands, because what mattered was not perfection, but presence. Once you speak, you challenge your fear, and each time you challenge it, it loses its power over you. What makes your voice powerful is not volume, it is authenticity. A voice rooted in honesty carries more strength than a shout rooted in anger. People respond to truth, vulnerability, and conviction. When you speak from a place of clarity and intention, you become a force that others cannot ignore. You start shaping your surroundings instead of being shaped by them. Imagine a student sitting in a classroom where everyone is too afraid to question an unfair rule. This rule places heavy pressure on students, causing stress and confusion, yet no one speaks. The silence drags on for weeks because each student believes that their single complaint will change nothing. Among them is a girl who feels the pressure as deeply as the rest, but she also understands that silence guarantees the situation remains the same. She spends days debating with herself, should she speak or stay quiet like everyone else? The fear of standing out makes her hesitate, but the desire for fairness keeps pushing her forward. Finally, during a class meeting, she raises her hand. Her voice is soft at first, but she speaks clearly about how the rule affects students and why change is needed. The room falls silent, but not with rejection, with shock. Others realize they had wanted to say the same thing, but lacked the courage. Soon, one by one, the students begin to agree. The teacher, surprised but impressed, listens and eventually decides to revise the rule, making it more reasonable for everyone. A change that seemed impossible happened because one student finally found her voice. Her courage gave others permission to speak, and together, their voices reshaped their environment. This example shows that your voice is not just expression, it is initiation. It is the first spark that can ignite change in your life and in the lives of others. When you stay silent, everything remains the same. When you speak, even if you stand alone at first, you open the door to transformation. Your voice is not small. It is not weak. It is the beginning of every meaningful change you will ever create. Speaking up does not mean you won't be afraid. Fear will always be present whenever you take a step towards something meaningful. Fear is a natural reaction to uncertainty, vulnerability, and risk. It is the mind's instinct to protect you from the unknown. But courage is not the opposite of fear. Courage is choosing to move forward despite it. Many people wait for the moment when they will no longer feel afraid before they speak their truth or stand for what they believe in. But that moment almost never comes. Fear does not disappear on its own, you must walk through it. Each time you speak up, even with shaking hands and an unsteady heart, you reclaim a piece of your power. You prove to yourself that fear does not control you, and that realization becomes one of the greatest strengths you will ever possess. The truth is that bravery is born inside discomfort. It lives in the moments when silence feels safer, when your voice trembles, when your courage feels small. You may think bravery has to be loud or confident, but some of the greatest acts of courage are quiet, soft, and uncertain. They happen in private moments when you choose to say what you truly feel, when you admit a truth that scares you, when you defend yourself or someone else, even though your whole body wants to retreat. Fear is not a sign that you are weak. Fear is a sign that what you are trying to do matters. When you speak up, you are not just addressing a situation, you are shaping the person you become. Every act of courage transforms you, even if no one else notices. When you stay silent out of fear, you teach your mind that fear wins. But when you speak, even in discomfort, you teach yourself that your voice is stronger than your fear. Over time, your confidence grows, not because fear leaves you, but because you learn to walk with it. Eventually, you discover that the things that once terrified you no longer hold the same power. They shrink because you've outgrown them. Fear will always offer 1,000 excuses to stay silent. It will tell you that you will be judged, misunderstood, rejected, or embarrassed. It will convince you that silence keeps you safe, but safety without expression is not peace, it is confinement. You do not grow in silence. You grow in movement. And the first movement is always the most frightening, but it is also the most liberating. Speaking up does not guarantee outcomes, but it guarantees dignity. It guarantees self-respect. It guarantees that you are no longer living at the mercy of fear. You do not speak because you expect the world to always agree. You speak because you expect yourself to be honest, brave, and true to your values. That alone is victory. Consider the example of a young employee named Arham. He works in a company where he has noticed a recurring issue. A senior manager often dismisses his ideas before he even finishes explaining them. Aram feels belittled and overlooked. Each meeting becomes a battle between his desire to contribute and his fear of being shut down. Week after week, he stays silent. He convinces himself that speaking up will cause conflict, damage his position, or make him seem disrespectful. But inside, he feels smaller each day. The silence becomes heavy, and his confidence begins to fade. One morning, after another restless night, replaying a meeting in his mind, he realizes that silence is costing him more than the fear of speaking ever could. So, at the next meeting, when the manager attempts to cut him off again, Aram gently raises his hand and says, "Respectfully, I would like to finish my point." His voice trembles slightly, but he keeps going. He explains his idea clearly. Even though his heart is pounding, the room falls quiet. To his surprise, several colleagues nod in agreement. After the meeting, 2 co-workers privately thank him for speaking up. They had felt the same way, but lacked the courage to say it. Even the manager, taken aback, later approaches Aram to discuss his idea more seriously. Aram did not feel fearless when he spoke. He felt terrified, but he acted anyway. And that single moment changed how he viewed himself. He learned that bravery is not loud, it is simply refusing to let fear decide who you are. This example shows that courage is not found in perfection or confidence. It is found in the decision to speak even while afraid. Fear may walk with you, but it never has to lead you. Every time you speak your truth, you take back control, one brave word at a time. Your story matters because it carries the truth of who you are, what you have survived, and what you have learned. Many people believe their experiences are too ordinary, too painful, or too flawed to share. They convince themselves that their story is not valuable, that no one will understand, or that their struggles make them appear weak. But the truth is the opposite. Your story holds a power that silence can never match. It is not perfection that inspires others, it is honesty. When you speak about what you have lived through, you offer understanding, strength, and hope to people who silently carry the same burdens. Your story becomes a light in dark corners, where others believe they are alone. Hiding your story does not protect you. It isolates you. Silence turns your experiences into invisible weight, a heaviness that follows you everywhere, but remains unspoken. When you lock your truth inside, you deny yourself the healing that comes from being seen and heard. You also deny others the opportunity to learn from your journey. Every victory, every mistake, every heartbreak you have endured has shaped your courage and your character. These pieces of your past are not scars to be hidden, but lessons to be shared. They carry wisdom that can lift someone else when they feel lost or defeated. When you share your story, it becomes more than a memory. It becomes a message. It reminds people that they are not the only ones struggling, that overcoming is possible, and that growth can emerge even from pain. People connect more deeply through shared vulnerability than through polished perfection. Your words can break the silence someone else has been suffocating in. They can inspire them to stand up, try again, or believe in themselves when doubt has clouded their vision. You never know who is waiting to hear the story you are afraid to tell. Your story is also a declaration of identity. Speaking it out loud is an act of self-respect. It is saying, "This is what shaped me. This is where I come from. This is why I am strong." When you own your story, the fear of judgment loses its power. People may misunderstand or criticize, but your courage becomes stronger than their opinions. Your truth becomes something you stand on, not something you hide from. And the more you share it, the more you transform your experiences into purpose. Everyone carries a story that could touch hearts, reshape perspectives, or encourage someone to rise from their struggles. You do not need to be a hero to inspire. You only need to be honest. You only need to be willing to speak. What you have gone through may be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their strength. Consider the example of a young woman named Alina, who grew up feeling defeated by constant challenges. She struggled in school, not because she wasn't intelligent, but because her home life was unstable. She often hid her pain behind a smile, believing that talking about her struggles would make her look weak. Years later, she found herself working as a tutor for students who faced similar difficulties. One day, she noticed a boy who never participated, never turned in assignments, and always kept his head down. Instead of scolding him, she gently asked what was holding him back. He shrugged and said, "You wouldn't understand." For a moment, she hesitated, then she told him her story. She spoke about her own challenges, her moments of doubt, and the times she wanted to give up. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She shared her real journey. The boy looked at her with surprise, then relief. He admitted he was dealing with problems very similar to hers. For the first time, he felt understood, not judged, not alone. Over the next few weeks, he opened up more, participated more, and began to improve. Her story, once a source of shame, had become a bridge that gave someone else hope. This simple moment shows why your story matters. It holds power, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. When you choose to speak instead of hiding, you turn your pain into purpose, your experience into guidance, and your truth into a spark that can light someone else's way. Your story is not just about you, it is a gift meant to be shared. Choosing your voice over silence is choosing your future over your past, because silence keeps you rooted in what has already happened, while your voice allows you to shape what comes next. When you remain silent, you stay tied to the patterns, fears, and limitations that have defined you so far. Silence traps you in old wounds, old mistakes, and old versions of yourself. It keeps you living inside memories instead of possibilities. You cannot grow forward while holding your voice back. Silence may feel comfortable and familiar, but it keeps you in the same place, unchanged, unheard, and unseen. Speaking up, however, is a declaration that you are ready to step into something new, something greater, something worthy of your potential. Your voice is more than sound. It is a choice. It is the properly moment where you decide that your truth matters more than your fear, your future matters more than your comfort, and your dreams matter more than the past that held you down. When you choose to speak, you are not only expressing yourself, you are rewriting your story. You are showing yourself that you are capable of more than silence, more than hesitation, more than the version of you shaped by fear or doubt. This act of speaking becomes the first intentional step toward growth. Silence ties you to what happened yesterday. It keeps the past alive by preventing you from challenging it. If you stay silent about the things that hurt you, they continue to affect you. If you stay silent about your ambitions, they remain unfulfilled. If you stay silent about your needs, they remain unmet. Silence is like living with a door open behind you and never turning around to close it. You carry the past forward instead of letting it stay where it belongs. On the other hand, when you choose your voice, you close that door and turn toward what can be. You stand at the doorway of your future, not your memories. Speaking up does not mean you are unafraid. It means you refuse to let fear keep writing your story. When you use your voice, you break the cycle of repeating the same patterns. You begin to learn, advocate, dream, and demand better. You choose clarity over confusion, action over hesitation, and truth over silence. Each moment you speak, even if your voice shakes, you build a stronger version of yourself, one that is aligned with your future instead of chained to your past. Your voice is also an invitation to opportunity. When you express your goals, the world can respond. When you reveal your talents, people notice. When you share your ideas, they evolve. The future does not come to the silent, it comes to the bold. Speaking out opens paths you could never see while staying quiet. Silence keeps life small. Voice expands it. Consider the example of a man named Kamran, who spent years avoiding confrontation and hiding his aspirations. Growing up, he was taught to stay quiet, don't make noise, don't draw attention. So even as an adult, he silenced his dreams. He had a brilliant idea for a community project that could help hundreds of young people. But every time he thought about presenting it to the local council, he hesitated. He told himself he wasn't important enough, experienced enough, or confident enough. Months passed, then years, and he watched others take initiative, while he remained a spectator in his own life. One day, after seeing another project launch, one very similar to the idea he'd been hiding, he felt a deep sadness, not because someone else succeeded, but because he realized he had silenced his own future. That moment changed him. He decided that even if his voice trembled, he would not hold it back anymore. At the next community meeting, he stood up to present his idea. His palms were sweating, his heart pounding, but he spoke. And to his surprise, people listened. They asked questions, showed interest, and eventually offered support. Within months, his project was approved, and soon he was leading something that once existed only in his imagination. Cameron didn't find his voice because he became fearless. He found it because he finally chose his future over his past. His life changed, not when he had a perfect plan, but when he made a simple, powerful decision. I will not stay silent anymore. This example shows that choosing your voice is choosing movement, transformation, and possibility. It is the moment you stop living for the person you once were and start living for the person you can become. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not have to confine you. Your future begins the moment you decide to speak. Remember this. We can accept failure because failure makes us stronger, but we can never, ever accept silence because silence steals our power. Let your voice rise, not in anger, but in purpose. Let it stand against fear, injustice, and self-doubt. Let it echo with dignity, strength, and unshakable hope.